send my donation in, but how else can I help that? And you get that helpless feeling, and then sometimes you just shut it down. You know, locally too, where locally you could make a difference. So I think it impacts.
Anybody else have anything you want to add to that?
Do you think if there is a major event suddenly in the world that it will be a large government that will be able to help a large majority of the population, or do you think it will be small local areas that there'll be pockets of survivors, and then eventually they're the ones that will come together, reconnect over the years? I mean, unless the government has a lot of warning that something is about to happen, there really won't be anything in place. It'd be more pockets of individuals who have survival skills who will survive and go on.
Last night, I don't know if any of you saw it, was kind of a B movie, but it was called Contagion.
Mhm.
And it was on TV last night. I only watched part of it because it kind of went on, but it was kind of interesting. It started out with somebody picked up, was in Hong Kong on business, picked up a disease, came to this country, and it was very interesting to see what happens in the local communities, because outbreaks were in certain cities, and people were immediately started with all these conspiracy theories that the government was doing this, or that the government had this vaccine and they weren't giving it to anybody, and so people started rioting, and it was really quite incredible. You know, a lot of things you just don't think about. So I don't know, even locally, if you can survive something like that, because you have a microcosm of people who are going to have conspiracy theories, and where, you know, it's going to be difficult.
Fear. They're going to be bound by fear,
Yes.
which causes people's survival skills to be more about themselves and not about anybody else around them, because everybody's each person for themselves, and nobody knows whether they're going to have what they need for their family or their loved ones in the near-term future. So I think the idea, the prospect of individual communities surviving would depend completely on the makeup of the people within that community.
We all seen the movie Hunger Games.
And
Read the book Hunger Games.
Well, there's several television shows running right now that are on that
Walking
concept.
Dead is amazing.
Yes. And
It's
Rev-
such a good movie, such a good show.
and Revolution is the same idea.
100 is a new show,
Mhm.
where they knew there was going to be an atomic blast, and they sent all these people up into a space station. Well, they feel now, they took 100 teenagers who were bad on the space station and sent them back to Earth to test to see if it's okay. That part I thought, okay, right. But some people and animals did survive the nuclear blast, and now the people on the space station, it's a very real concept. They're running out of supplies on the space station. They don't know if they should send more people down to the Earth, and the politics on the space station are just like unreal. It's like Nazism in many ways at its finest. It's just, it's a very interesting show when you start thinking of social issues that are involved in it.
Mhm.
what's the name of it?
100, and it's on a channel called CW. I just found it by accident one night.
It comes on every week,
Yeah, it's on once a week. I don't remember what night it's on, but
and it's called 100.
100. Because of 100 bad teenagers they sent off.
I wonder what would happen if Davis Bessie blew up. And the people,
I
my mother who lives 1 mile from where I am can get the pills, but I can't. You can't, you're not 10 miles away.
I live in the zone.
Mine are in the cupboard.
And so how much would,
Well, see, and
you're really,
Next year.
I went last year, I went to a teacher's like informational thing, and you know, they gave us the whole spiel and whatever, and how safe it is, and you know, and it was really safe until I got into their like war room, you know, like their command zone inside, and I saw like the little square, and I'm like, I live right there, you know, it's like, oh.
How would people?
I don't know. And there's no, I mean, they give you like the little calendar. Do you guys get the calendar that says we have been informed? That's like the only, that you're supposed to put in your window if there's, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, what is that gonna do? Really? I mean, it's gonna tell us when you've been informed. If there's been some kind of disaster, you're supposed to put it in your window so that I guess they don't break down your door looking for somebody? I don't know.
No, I think the idea is if there's a small release, you're supposed to stay inside the house.
Right.
So if you put that sign up, they know that you,
Well, that too.
they
See,
know that you
there's
know.
no like education that's going on.
We have plenty of duct
I
tape.
received some very interesting information from a climatologist about Davis Bessie. If it's released here, and with our wind currents, you should head south. You should go to Columbus, Ohio, Lancaster, Ohio, immediately.
Well, it
Just
just
head south.
depends on the prevailing wind of the day.
Now, it's not what he said.
Oh, well, I would look at the wind to determine which way I went.
Then you would not even benefit from the pills, because Mary's
Well, I
not
don't, I
gonna
don't have, I don't have the, well, I don't have the pills, I don't know why I don't.
Mary isn't gonna benefit
No.
from anything.
I don't think you
I don't think they
Mary is in the
Not
shadow
anymore.
of the cooling tower. I live closer than anybody. could
Yeah.
possibly
See, I'm
live
surprised
to
they
it.
still gave them to you, because the ones they gave to us expired, and they said they weren't giving it
They're
out
just
anymore.
iodine.
Well, ours
It's
aren't
nothing
expired
like-
yet, so
you
they
can go
are,
get
I
iodine.
maybe they'll
Mary
tell
has
me.
her own climate, because it's so close.
It's
Oh, do
true.
you- do
Oh,
you
it's
get the
true.
snow whenever-
We do,
That's
and,
crazy.
and we can't deal with satellite TV or
Why do you
satellite
know about
anything, because
this?
if the steam cloud is too thick, it interferes with the satellite
Mhm.
signal. Everything
That's
says
all.
searching signal, searching for a signal, and on their screens, your internet or your TV. That
Well,
makes
how are
it
you
so
gonna get
much
out of
better.
town anyway? You can go over the bridge, which will probably be closed down, or 53 through Fremont, which will probably be jammed.
Hop in a boat.
Okay,
Don't wanna
well, I
take
think
round
we've applauded our ability to not
We're
survive.
surviving, we're being able to do
Survival in our
Yeah.
local
Right.
I don't
Then
know
the
why they did
conspiracy
that,
theories
because
will
there's one
start.
bridge now to
Yeah.
get,
My friend
That's
uses
right.
a bomb on
we have to head west, just for.
I figure if Davis Bessie goes, you might as well pour a cup of coffee and relax.
Okay, can I divert this for a minute, please?
Please do.
What we're talking
All
about?
right, well, I know, but, he mentions in his thing about that he has, in his novels, whether fortuitously or otherwise, predicted the idea that the Northwest Passage was going to melt, and that, technology was going to be created to, convert carbon dioxide, into more manageable things. Is that important, to these kinds of novels or these kinds of writings, to have authors that are in tune with what's going to happen, so that they're able to predict this? Is it just fortuitous on his part? Is it or just serendipitous maybe on his part that it happened? Can you think of examples where they've predicted things that haven't happened, or they've predicted things that have happened?
I think it's good that they predict stuff that might happen, because it gives you options you can think of in advance.
Okay.
Some of us only like to read things that are plausible, because we're basically nonfiction readers, and if it's highly plausible, then we might be inclined to read it.
Yeah, it reminded me, somebody mentioned that they were reading it. One of you mentioned this. I think you were reading a book, and then you wanted to know whether or not it was actually based on something historical, and it was. And so you continued, as opposed to, so what if it wasn't? Why would that make a difference?
No, I was the one who said it,
Oh,
and
okay.
I would have continued to read it, but it was interesting to me, just having read many historical fiction books, where it was easy to see the difference between the real and the fiction, where in this
Oh.
one, because I didn't have that background, I didn't know it until I looked it up.
Okay, so it wasn't going to influence whether or not you're going to continue
No,
reading. You were
no.
just really curious about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I sort of think and he didn't seem like he had this approach himself, but if the author has any interest in trying to affect a societal outlook or a societal position toward any particular issue, that if the author's more educated about the elements about which they're writing that may come into reality, they're more likely to get people who who want to read it, not, maybe all for different reasons, but come to it with a desire to read it because it relates to something that's plausible and therefore gets them to think about, you know, what are the possibilities or what are the ramifications or where could this go?
I wish you would have spent some more time talking about the artificial photosynthesis, because I actually looked through and afterwards, and I'm like, oh, what, you know, is this actually, I, you know, Googled artificial photosynthesis, and sure enough, ruthenium is used in artificial, and I mean, I'm a botanist and I didn't know that, you know, I mean, for love Pete. I mean, I've seen about, or I've read about, you know, artificial photosystems and things like that, so I would wish he would have, as opposed to spending so much time on the guys shoved down in the bow of the boat, you know, spend a little bit more time explaining about, I don't know, somehow the process of, but I guess he's not a scientist, so.
You know, another author that I think does this is Michael Crichton. His books are just, they also would handle topics that you never thought about. I remember reading about something about, well, the Andromeda strain was about
Right.
Yeah.
virus, and he wrote something about trafficking, human trafficking, I can't remember the book, but before then, you know, he wrote it quite a while ago. He wrote another one about Japan and how they were, you know, getting into the business world the way they did. And I think what that does then, it does wake you up into certain things and make you aware of them, even though it's a fictional book. They use
It's
real
good for
things.
us, yeah.
I think it's amazing when you see these authors like him pick up on something. And it takes me back to a writing class I had in college, which was sort of an intermediate, and we had to keep a notebook. And it made you think all the time around you. Things, you had topics that you could write on. And there were different topics in your book, like things I read, things I heard, things somebody told me, so that it trained you to start looking at everything that was around you as a topic for writing about. And you had to be realistic, because then after 2 weeks you turned it in and you picked up a couple topics that you did. But I think it's the training of a writer to look for those things that are plausible. I never could do it. It was very stressful to be thinking constantly, but he must do it. He's got to do it.
Is there a social benefit to this book? Or to these types of books? Or to the types of programs that like the 100 you were talking about, or all the other programs that are out there that deal with these global
I'm wondering if some of these modern games that the kids are playing on their little things, or any of the movies they see, are doing the same thing by doing it, that's making them aware of what needs to be done or what's bad in the world that they could fix, or whether these games are just violent
Escapism.
So
escapism.
all of these books and things like that. I think it's just kind of like, you know, desensitizing us to the fact that something bad could happen, and maybe just putting it like in the back of our mind, you know? And good, bad, is it scare tactics, is it, you know, but at least it's maybe somehow trying to draw attention to, you know, the fact that the population could bust, you know? So I think.
One of the purposes of this whole, you know, this whole 4-session thing is to try to understand where we get our information from, to try to understand how we gain knowledge, how we you know, understand or construct concepts about these issues ourselves, you know. So if in reading this or if in watching television, you are, you know, you construct ideas about survival, I just wonder, are these constructions constructive, I guess.
Well, it depends. You know, the Walking Dead, for instance, that is so.
Can you summarize that within like 2
So,
sentences?
Yeah,
Because
so
I
it's.
don't know that show.
Oh,
So good.
so, they've completely become cut off. Everybody does. Technology, everything goes down. And nobody, even in the show, it's how many years in, you don't know how far that extends. There's no idea if it's the whole world, or if it's just an area of the planet, or if it's just the United States, or what is it that's affected. But as a result, there's something that starts, and people become back alive, but they have no, they're dead, or the Walking Dead. So it's a zombie apocalypse. And the whole idea is they eat other humans, only the ones that have become zombies. And it's huge among the teenage and college age, and the obsession right now with zombies, and the fact that people will die and be alive again, and that how will you survive, and the
It's
idea.
the social structure though that makes the TV show.
Well, that's what I was going to say,
Okay.
but that's the disturbing part, is because the social structure is always undependent, you cannot rely on it. It is always, you always have to be watching your back. Even when they think they have a safe group, somebody ends up doing something that's vile to the rest of the group, and either has to be removed from the group, or is killed by somebody else, or somebody else gets into their group, and it's a constant state of fear, and a constant state of not only of the fear of these zombies, but a fear of who can you trust around you, and what we have tomorrow. And so the people who are surviving are the ones who trust that they're gonna find what they need next, but they're all obviously extremely jaded, as you can imagine, and warped. So even the idea that there could be any possibility that things will be normal sometime in the future, some people can see that that's never going to happen, and other people think, well, we can live like this. We can make it through day to day on this sort of survival. And so I think there's a huge divide that way when you look at the movie itself and people and the followers, and whether this is something that's normal and we can all think about, and it's sort of fun to think about, and there are games out there that are Walking Dead as well, or whether it's something that
Based
you
off
think,
of a comic book.
well, but now
Yeah.
there are the iPad games and the iPhone
Well, yeah,
games
no, I
and
know.
those too.
But see, there's a show on TV that's Survivor. That's the same thing. That's cutthroat.
Yeah, I just like The Walking Dead because I think it's really well, it's visually, aside from there's a couple times I turn my head because it's really eh. But I don't know, it makes me think, what would I do? You know what I'm saying? And I think that that's something that I've never really thought about, and it's I think from what I've understood from the comic books, it's a virus that takes over the body, which is completely plausible. You never know. So, are they going to turn into? I don't know about that. But but some kind of zombie that. I spend too much time around teenagers.
That's
Sorry.
my problem is, the college kids are really into the zombie stuff, and there was a guy in one of the departments that did his capstone thesis on the zombie apocalypse, but I thought, why are we wasting our time with this when it seems to be, something that's not relevant
Well,
to.
but I think it's people trying, I do think it is especially in the 20-some population, and even some of the older teenage and up, I think that there is a certain part of people that are trying to grasp with the idea of pandemics. And, we've gone through the H1N1, we talk about the different flus, and there's all these scares, and we did the long lines when I was living in Columbus to get the vaccinations, and only the children could get it. And, there were a lot of things that even these young people have seen already, that the idea of a zombie apocalypse is a way of how do we deal with it? How
Pull
do
out
we,
zombie apocalypse, put in global warming. You know what I'm saying? So that's.
But I think
Or
it's
nuclear attack.
Or nuclear attack,
I mean,
or the
right.
electromagnetic pulse, or.
Right.
Except for you don't
I
have
have a
people-
question for the group.
Pardon me?
I have a question for the group.
Oh, all right.
Thinking back a number of years, how many of us took money out of the bank when it was the millennium? Because took money out of the bank
You
to
had
prepare.
cash in, you had cash at
Oh,
home on
two
December
I didn't have
31st.
enough money to
It was
pull
so much
anything out.
I didn't believe it.
To prepare for Y2K.
Mhm.
As a former
do?
computer programmer, I can tell you how many programs I wrote with 19 blank blank. They were not written to go beyond 1999. Didn't write them that way.
So did you, Connie?
Yes, I was married to a banker at the time.
Oh.
And we had a family meeting, and he met with his father, and he talked to my parents, and each of us decided how much we would get out and where you would put it in your house, because there was a real potential that for days, you would not have access to anything that was in your main.
We all went to Florida. That way we wouldn't, and the ones who were scared of the family wouldn't fly down to go with us because they were afraid the planes would go down. But
Figured if you're gonna
Rest was
get stuck in
no, we
Florida.
figured out nothing's gonna happen.
Here's the
do the next
Midnight
video.
spring night. Let it go back.
All right.
The next video.
I love power tools. What a great invention. I also know how to run the torch.
We call it the hot wrench. Because you just put the hot wrench on and it'll come apart.
Using power tools, inventing their own parts,
Your way? Okay.
keeping the combines running in some pretty tough situations.
Okay, Jeff.
Newlyweds
Thank
Corey
you.
and Julie Schrum push their mechanical skills to the limit for the survival of the family farm.
We kind of got asked the question, what do you guys, do you guys build stuff? And then I kind of thought, well, no, we kind of engineer it. We're kind of almost farmer engineers. Okay, Julie, come on in.
There's just not a lot of women out there who, can do that.
Keep coming, you're looking good.
So when we saw that, the two of us kind of went, oh boy, he found one.
We're kind of picky about our equipment. Second-hand, third-hand, fourth-hand machine. And we just we go through it and we fix it up.
Even if it was all brand new, the paint could still be drying on it, and there would definitely be something that wasn't just quite up to his standards.
That is one reason why I love her so much. It's because she has lots of patience about that.
I've always known my whole life that I wanted to be a farmer. It's just something that I love to do.
By marrying Corey, Julie became part of the Schrum family legacy, a farm which had already survived for generations.
My great-grandfather was a wheat and cattle rancher, and my grandfather, my uncle, my dad, and now us.
And it really means a lot to me to keep that heritage going.
Keeping it going becomes harder all the time as costs of running the farm continue to skyrocket, and wheat prices stay basically the same. But Corey and Julie try to keep things in balance.
We work hard and play hard. We work hard when we're farming, and then our fun time is when we have derby.
That would be the combine demolition derby. With 4 to 5 farm machines, duke it out in an all-day battle royale. Julie drives the combine. And the other members of Team Schrum push their limits, ensuring the machine's survival.
You gotta start, probably a couple months in advance, trying to use original combine parts to rebuild and reinforce the best way possible.
The team took special care to reinforce the rear axle. It's a prime target for attack because it's so critical in steering.
We had a lot of people come up and talk to us, and they said, wow, what'd you do to that rear axle? It was bulletproof.
Bulletproof, and maybe just as importantly, lightweight.
Our theory was to make it light as possible on the back end. So, if she is hit, all it does is kind of spin it around.
Yanking the guts
Right.
out of Julie's combine. Oh my gosh, we laughed. Julie and I were holding Corey's feet. He was up inside the combine cutting stuff off.
But no matter how much planning they do, there are still surprises. Like rain turning the arena to mud on the day of the derby. But what's bad for competition is great for the farm. where lack of rain is usually the problem, water has become
A very precious commodity. I mean, you run out of water and you're gonna die.
and less water means less wheat. A few years ago,
We really had a really bad drought. It was awful. We cut and cut and cut. I mean, for hours on end, and we would not get a bulk tank full.
but the Shrums are luckier than a lot of other farmers. They have an underground water supply that seems so plentiful, the city wants in.
They come and knock on our door about once every 2 or 3 years, it seems like, with some other plan for exchanging water.
One proposal actually had the Shrums giving the city their well and then buying water back for themselves.
Which didn't take a rocket scientist to figure that that probably wasn't a great deal.
No.
It's possible that underground rock formations are pooling the Shrums' rainfall, but their luck and their water may be running out. They've already seen their water level drop about 35 feet, and it's only going to get worse because
The city is slowly creeping in on our farm. There's a lot more residential being built, so there's a lot more water demand.
so they could wake up any day and find themselves without water.
We do have some local towns around that have underground wells out here that are pumping the swimming pool dry.
But for 2 days every year, the Shrums stop worrying about the forces of nature and focus on another kind of force. For a shot at the title, a Derby combine's gotta move quickly and be able to take a pounding. But it has to deliver a good beating too, usually with the header, the business part of the combine. In the field, its function is to harvest the wheat. But in the Derby, its function is, yeah, that. So Team Shrum worked hard to prevent the header from absorbing the full, brutal whack.
Taking the blunt force on the header end and transferring that force through the machine, through all the main framework.
Hold it. Transferring force? How did you do that?
We took the tubing and ran it from the main shafts all the way through, clear up past where we've seen the failure points on these style of machines in the past.
Ah, okay, go. So the Shrum's header, like the rest of their machine, can take a pretty good beating. But the pit crew still faces big challenges between heats.
The boys sit there and watch Julie out in the ring. They're assessing the whole time. What's the combine sound like? What's it doing? Oop, that got broke. We can put that on the list.
It's really kind of a science because, here's a machine that comes in with a bent frame and you're thinking, how are we going to get that straightened back up?
Derby can be about the survival of the fittest machine, but it's also an attitude of your driver.
Your heart races, you get an adrenaline rush, you get the shakes, and then you go out and hit somebody, and then it kind of relaxes, but you still realize, like, I could really get hurt doing this.
Julie took second place in her qualifying heat, and after repairs, moved on to the finals. And then, after 7 combines were eliminated,
Julie Shrill going out of third place in the country boss. A fine job by Julie. Washington again. Thanks guys for coming out. See you next year.
I got scared and I didn't like it, so I quit.
I was totally fine with just surviving and living with that I got 4th place.
Outstanding! We placed! I was ecstatic. I was happy with how far she got. In my eyes, she got first place.
Quarry haven't decided yet if they'll compete again. But the family farm offers plenty of opportunity for them to push their limits.
I feel most alive when the grain is just rolling in the tank, crops are good.
You're cutting wheat for somebody, and that wheat is eventually going to make bread for somebody to eat.
Our main goal has been to try to leave them something that's a little stronger, you know, than what we acquired, make it a little better.
I want to survive, and I want this farm to survive. I want him to carry that on. I really do. That means a lot to me. And he's doing a fine job at it. He needs to get some kids. He needs to have some kids.